Guys, buckle up. Prepare yourselves for what I'm about to say. You might want to sit down for this one. But I think I give this episode a full thumbs up. Andor episode 10, let's conversationalize. Alright guys, I thought that overall, this episode was good. And there were definitely some moments where I was kind of cheering. I was like, okay, oh yeah, now we're doing this. Now we are doing this. And it felt good. And so much of the reason that it felt good was because of two words. Andy Serkis. Done. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget that, I'm kidding. But no, this episode I actually thought was good. Maybe a couple criticisms, but not big enough to ruin the fact that this was a good episode. So let's get into it. It started off with Andy Serkis' character, Kino Loy, still being hesitant to escape the prison, still thinking that Andor's crazy, which I wasn't really sure why he was still hesitant, because at the end of the last episode, him telling Andor how many guards were on each level seemed to be confirmation that Kino was going to help, that Kino was going to escape with Andor, but now he's hesitant again. I didn't really like that, but I did like what it led to. So, you know, Andor's trying to convince him, and because Andor and Kino both know that if they're just going to stay in the prison, they're both going to die, and so Andor's trying to tell him, he's like, dude, I would rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want. So that line is important because it comes up later in such an awesome way. So Kino finally tells the rest of the guys in the level that yes, it's true, nobody's actually getting released, we're all going to die in this prison. And he says that, and he's like, okay, we'll try to figure something out, and then they all go to bed. And I was really disappointed at first because I was like, they could have had a really cool moment where he said the speech or something, like rouse them to get them all out. And he does, it's just not then. He does it in the next morning. It's sort of. It's like, alright, we only got one chance at this, let's make it look good, let's do this. And I kind of wish that they would have just had him do that before, when he was, like, when it seemed like it was going to happen at nighttime. But it did in the morning. I don't really know why they waited, but, you know, I feel like you just should have rode that tension at the beginning, like, hey, let's do this. I've just discovered that we're all going to die anyway, so we shouldn't even worry about finishing our sentences because the Empire sucks. So we're going to break out and destroy any Imperial we have to. I wish he would have just rode that, but they go to bed, and then another scene happens, and then they wake up, and then they roll with it. So, you know, whatever. But they start the escape plan. Andor does rupture the pipe, apparently spraying a bunch of water everywhere. He ruptures the water line, like the pipe that I talked about in the previous video, in the previous episode, that he looked like he was trying to cut open. So he does rupture the pipe in this episode. Somehow the Imperials still didn't discover that there was a damaged panel on the side. But he does rupture the pipe. I'm not really sure what that was supposed to do, like what the water, like, it seemed to let the other prisoners know that there was something going on. So maybe, like, because the water was dripping from the other level, so that may have been what it was. I'm not really exactly sure what that was meant to do. But bottom line is, they start the plan. They are starting to escape. They climb. Some of the guys in Andor's table who was working with the factory die. I didn't feel the same way about them that I felt about the characters in episode 6, just because they didn't have any backstory about these guys, or like they weren't really trying to make you feel for them or give you intricacies about them. They were just kind of guys that Andor's working with that were, you know, fairly nice. And it did make for like, oh man, dang it, he died. And then you move on and you don't really feel too much, but you feel enough to be like, oh man, that's sad. So I feel like, you know, that's kind of what they just should have done with, you know, episode 6 in Aldhani, is just don't give, if you're just going to have the characters die, not really spend a whole lot of time on the fact that they died or their sacrifice, then just don't give them a bunch of intricacies, you know? Just avoid that, because there's really no point if that's all you're going to do with them. But that's what they did in this episode, and I was glad for it. So yeah, they're just going up. They're climbing. The prisoners are just swarming every part of the prison, shooting this Imperial, shooting this Imperial, shooting this Imperial. It's great. But a little before that, we kind of cut it a little bit, because I was weirded out, because I think it was around the scene where they were about to escape. Like, you could tell, like Andor and the rest of the guys were doing the factory work, and they were just about to do it. The tension was there. It was like, yes, 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 and then we slow to a crawl with some of the other people in town and Ferrix talking about Andor's mother and her bad health. And Senta's overhearing this. We didn't really need it. Like, they didn't do anything with the rest of the episode, and in the scene with the rest of the episode, it doesn't come up later in the episode, so we didn't need it. They could have just saved it for the next one. Then we have another Mon Mothma scene. She meets the guy Davo from the last episode. Essentially, he tells her that he'll help her with her bank stuff if she'll allow her daughter to become a girlfriend of his son. I don't understand that either. I don't understand that either. It's like, it's a really weird plot line to just kind of throw this in there. Like, oh, I'll help you, but you have to, your daughter has to, be girlfriend with my son. And she's definitely afraid. Like, she doesn't want her like, to give her daughter to this, this boy. And which, makes perfect sense. Her fear is understandable, but it just is it feels like a kind of a forced problem. It feels like a forced conflict there. It's like, oh, will she have to give up her daughter for the rebellion? Like, how is this gonna? I feel like there's a better way they could have done it, and instead of just oh, by the way, I have this son and he wants to, he's gonna be your daughter's boyfriend. Again, it's kind of random and just thrown out there all of a sudden. It's like, oh wait, what are we talking about? Like, girlfriend, boyfriend, like betrothed? Like, I don't know. It just, again, it feels out there. And yes, I know I've mentioned several criticisms at this point, but the good stuff in this episode does definitely outweigh the bad stuff. So you cut back to Andor and Kino in the prison. They've infiltrated the control center, and Andor tells Kino to get on the mic and announce to the whole prison and all the prisoners that the prisoners are the ones in control of this facility, and that it is now their time to rise and get out of that joint and get out of Dodge. And at first, Kino kind of says something to the effect of, well, yeah, this is kind of, our one chance. We just need to get out and, just get as far as we can. Andor's like, that's all you got? And then Andy Serkis, good gosh, his acting talent is through the roof. He just lays it all out. Like, it's this slow rise. Like, throughout the whole escape, he's had this nervous look on his face. And he's hesitant to even start announcing to the prisoners. And Andor's like, dude, you do this every day. You're the leader of our level. Like, you tell everybody what to do. So tell them what to do right now. But he's hesitant. And I feel like the reason that Kino's hesitant is because he's still in disbelief that they made it this far. He's still in disbelief that they made it far enough to even be in the control center, announcing to the rest of the prisoners in the prison that, hey, this is our time to get out. Like, he's hesitant about that. Like I'm about to be free? That's crazy. But, he just has this gradual vigor that's just rising and rising as he's, saying his speech to the rest of the prison. And it's just really cool to see. And boy, Andy Serkis does a phenomenal job. And he's just, he's telling the prisoners, like, we know that the Empire, just when they release us, they're just sending us to another prison. So they just want us to die here. But we will not. We will climb. We will rise. And we will not work for them anymore because we're tired of their bull mess. I paraphrase. That's essentially what he says. But then he says the line that Andor said earlier in the episode where, I would rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want. And it was awesome because he said that as he was looking at Andor. Because you could tell that Andor was the one who truly inspired him to escape, who truly inspired him to get out of that prison. And yes, that scene was done phenomenally. It was done phenomenally, and it was such in part to, give such thanks to Andy Serkis' acting. It's just so good. And then, once they've gotten out of the prison and killed most of the Imperials, and then this is pretty much all throughout the episodes. It's a shorter episode, so once they've done all that, Andy Serkis and Andor make it to the edge of the building, or edge of the entrance to the prison, and they're all jumping all the prisoners are coming from behind them, jumping into the water, and Andy Serkis is just staying there, And Andor's like, what are you doing? Let's jump. And then Andy Serkis is like, I can't swim. I can't swim. And Andor's like, what? And then some other guys like end up accidentally pushing him into the water. So him and that other guy, Melshi, from the last episode, make it out with the rest of the prisoners. But we don't... The episode kind of just leaves it at that with Andy Serkis' character. That was a little weird. That they just ended on, like, I can't swim. So he's still at the prison. And I really didn't want him to die in this episode, and he doesn't. But I'm worried what they're going to do. I'm worried if they're going to have him die later or get captured by the Empire. Because it's like, you really want to see him free. Because that's like, he's been hesitant this whole time. And that, he says, like, I only have 217 shifts left. But he wants to be free. You can tell he really wants to be free. You want him to taste that freedom. So I feel like you should just let him have that. I mean, I get that it would be a noble sacrifice if he ended up, doing something like that for the rest of the prisoners, and which he already has. But still, I feel like to take him so close and not get him there is just kind of cruel to his character if they don't do that. So I hope they do that. But just his whole speech to the prison and just the inspiration of seeing all the prisoners just get out and escape the injustice that's been brought upon them is just so inspiring and awesome. Other big thing that happens in this episode is Luthen has got to go meet with this dude who they don't say who he is at first. And then later you discover that it's actually one of the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau guys in the conference that's been talking in the conference. He's just kind of been in the background saying a few things here and there. But apparently he's actually been working undercover for Luthen for about a year now. And apparently he has a daughter. He has a wife. Apparently a little daughter, like a baby. Because the way Luthen made it sound is like she was born in that time in the year's time that had been since Luthen requested his help. And so the main rundown of the scene is the dude wants to quit because he has a daughter and a wife. He wants to quit the ISB and he wants to quit working for Luthen. So, two birds, one stone. And Luthen's trying to convince him. He's like, dude, you can't quit, man. I need you. I need all the help I can get. And Luthen tells him, he's like, I know what you sacrifice every day. Having to live a double life, having to put on a facade in front of everyone, knowing that you're at such great risk if the Empire finds out that you're actually working for me. I know you put on this risk, and I'm thankful for that. But then the guy's like, well, yeah, I put on a big risk. I have a daughter now. I have a wife now. Like, what do you sacrifice, Luthen? What are you giving up for this rebellion? And Luthen just has this big moment, this big speech where he just lays it out for this guy, and he's like, what do I sacrifice? What do I sacrifice? He says he's been working on this rebellion for 15 years, which would be since the Empire started. And that, like, what he sacrifices is a life of love, joy, peace. Like, he knows he's given all that up. And he knows by the time that his part in the story is over, he'll be dead. Like, his end will be battling the Empire. And he feels that, any peace he could have ever had, any calm, any love is just gone inside of him. Now it's just the mission. And he knows that he's never going to get any gratitude or any praise from the rest of the galaxy for him helping to save them, helping to liberate them from the Empire. He knows he's never going to get any gratitude for them. He's never going to get to see that day. He's just in it because of how... It seems because of how evil the Empire is. I will say, there is a theory that I've heard from another YouTube channel that I'm actually down for, especially after this episode, that Luthen could be a Jedi, a former Jedi, who, because he saw the atrocities of what the Empire did to the Jedi, that is his true motivation, because he had that Kyber crystal. So it would make sense that he would be a Jedi, so like a former Jedi. So I'd be down with that theory. I'd be into it, and it did seem like that might be where it's heading towards in this episode, but I wasn't exactly sure. They didn't reveal it yet, but they may. It's actually a pretty good theory. But yeah, he just lays it all on the line for this ISB guy, and he's like, dude, you can't quit. I need you. And then he just closes the door that the ISB guy's behind. Essentially just like, you can't quit. You're still working. Because I told you to. And it kind of puts you in a complicated place as a viewer, because you're like, okay, so clearly Luthen is in it to win it, but he's also doing some pretty questionable things. Like, the ISB dude tells him that Anto Krieger is walking into a trap because the Empire knows about Anto Krieger's operations, as revealed in the last episode. The ISB guy tells Luthen this, and Luthen's like, I'm not going to risk your undercover position to save Anto Krieger. Like, I'll just let them die. The Empire will be convinced that their system works, because if he tells Anto Krieger that they are walking into a trap, that's going to... And Anto Krieger knows how to avoid it when they attack, I think it's called Spell House, like the base that Anto Krieger and his men are going to attack, then that's going to reveal that the ISB has some kind of leak. Like, there's some kind of undercover guy working inside there, because that's the only way Anto Krieger could know that he was walking into a trap in the first place. So, it's an understandable debate, but it's definitely not like... I feel like the obvious right thing to do would be letting them know despite that. Just like kind of risking his position and hoping that they won't find out, but still letting Anto and his men know, because, I mean, he said that was like 50 guys between Anto and the rest of his men that were walking into that trap. So it's just, it definitely some moral ambiguity there, and that kind of stuff is like, it makes you think. So that I feel like that does its job well. So yeah, it does put you in an interesting place with the character of Luthen. It's like, I love him, he's great, but he's also not great. So definitely some stuff to think about. So those are the biggest things. Like, then the episode ends with, apparently Andor and Melshi have swam to land. Apparently there is land on this planet, it's not just water. And so they are running away from the Empire, and now they are escaped cons on the run. Now it's the fugitive in Star Wars instead of Blade Runner. So I am very curious to see what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes, because this seems like it could have been more of like a mid-season thing than a toward the end of the season thing. I'm very curious how this is all going to tie together, where this is going to lead, because I got nothing at this point. But I think the best part about this episode overall, the thing that just pushed this episode past the mark for me of what this show has previously been, is that there was no Karn. Karn was gone. Karn was out. Karn is not there. Boom. That's all I need to know. Thank you guys for watching. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And that's a wrap.